Welcome to Beyond the Shelf. I'm Dawn.
And I'm Jenny.
For this month's episode, we decided to read some more memoirs. We both really enjoyed Trevor Noah's book. Mm-hmm. So we thought, hey, let's do that again. Except for one of the books we picked wasn't really a memoir.
Well, yeah, I guess not. But It was kind of.
Kind of.
It reminded us of him.
Yes.
So
is that the point of the memoir?
I don't know.
To remember?
I remembered him while I was reading it.
So the two books that we decided to read for this month is Britney Spears' new memoir that came out in October 2023, The Woman in Me. And we also read A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood by Fred Rogers. And was it also by Tom Junod? I don't know how to say his last name.
I was a little confused about that, honestly. Mm-hmm. So I listened to both of them.
I did too. Yes.
Okay. So the Mr. Rogers one, Fred Rogers did part of it. It was his voice. You know, it was kind of how I refer to as Mr. Roger-isms, where he just had little splurts of advice and feel good type of things. And then the other guy would read other things, but he the way he read it as if as first person. So he read it as if Fred had written it. So yeah, I'm guessing that Fred wrote it, or maybe he helped him write it. I don't know.
My understanding of this particular one is that it was inspired from the Esquire profile that Tom wrote. The profile was called Can You Say Hero? So have you seen the Tom Hanks movie, A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood? I
have not, but this book made me want to.
Okay, I absolutely love that movie. Personally, I'm a big Mr. Rogers fan. Mm-hmm. I grew up watching his show. Like, he has a dear place in my heart. I think just because he's one of those like consistent, comforting figures, which I think was kind of one of his goals to be. So I was really excited to listen to this, and I really liked the introduction part, but I think the reason I liked the introduction more is because it talked more about like experiences with Mr. Rogers. I can't call him Fred. I have to say Mr. Rogers. That's just who he is.
It's like your high school teacher.
Right.
When you're 30 or 40 years old and you see them, you still call them Mr. or Mrs. Yeah.
Exactly, yes. So I liked that part more where like it was about his experiences and watching him interacting with kids in the introduction when they were doing an episode at like the train station because they were talking about the artwork on the ceiling, I think it was, or the clock. I think they were talking about the clock. And he was interacting with like different kids and some of the stuff there. I liked that more. I probably almost cried 4 times listening to the introduction, at least 4 times. One of my friends who read this, in her review on Goodreads, she described A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, this book, as his philosophies on child development and parenting, which I thought was a pretty good...
That wraps it up very well.
Yeah, description of it. It's not like a memoir if you're expecting to see more of like his experiences or learn about his life or anything. That's not what this book was. I still enjoyed like the bits of advice, mostly because it felt like it was a really good reminder to like give yourself grace and give other people around you grace. Not even just like kids, because a lot of it, he does talk about kids. That was his whole like life mission, was to be the good thing on TV for kids. But I found that I was thinking a lot about even interacting with like adults in the way that he talks about interacting with kids. I mean, you don't have adults putting their fingers in their mouth like toddlers when he talks about like toddlers exploring the world. But
yeah, well,
not necessarily. Usually,
I don't know. I've seen things. Anyhow, so yeah, he passed away in 2003.
Okay.
So obviously, the recordings of him speaking for this book that came out in 2019 are not from 2019, obviously.
No, right.
So I don't know if this was something that he was possibly working on before he passed away, and it was shelved or whatever.
Right.
I thought it was good, though. Did you enjoy it? I guess I should ask.
I did. I think it was one of those, in ways it was comforting, and in ways it really got me thinking about how I interact with, not like I said, not just kids, but with everybody. I thought he had some interesting thoughts. I guess now knowing that he passed away in 2003, like There's one chapter he talks about electronic play, specifically like video games. And it's been 20 years since 2003, 21, I guess now.
Yeah.
And so like video games and how children interact with electronics has changed significantly.
Oh, yeah.
In that amount of time. One of the things that he talks about with electronic play is he thinks that like if there's a lot of focus on that, then it will affect how we interact with each other. I kind of feel like he predicted the future there.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought that was really, really interesting.
Yeah. It's amazing to me how young children are that can work a phone, you know, a smartphone, and know how to swipe and find the games they want to play or pictures or whatever. It's amazing to me. That's why parents have to put like little pin codes on their phones sometimes so their kids stay off of it. I know one time Ashley was letting her nephews play on her phone. This is her best friend's kids. She calls them her nephews. Anyhow, they're playing on her phone and they're playing a game and it popped up. To continue this, you needed 20,000 coins. Okay, do you want to spend $4? And they just pushed yes. And she didn't have it set up that they had to do a password. It ended up costing her like $17 or something for them to play the game.
Oh my gosh.
So she changed the settings on her phone. And they didn't do it maliciously.
Sure.
They're just like, oh, they said, do you want to continue? Yes, I want to keep playing.
Sure.
But so he had a lot of good thoughts about not letting children just be involved in video games. But I wonder what he would say now, 20 years later.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Because we're so like computer and electronic focused. But one of the things he said in a later chapter, I think when he was talking about like health, is that I think he said he often reminds children, but like you can remind anybody, that all of the machines and the computers and the things that we have were created by people. And we still need people to run them. And so even though like we have all of this technology that we're immersed in, like we still have to remember there are people behind it. And there's still that connection. Like we still need each other.
For now.
I know. Now they've got AI, right?
Which is taking over everything. It gives me the willies. I'm not a fan.
No, I personally try not to interact with like AI art. I have a lot of friends who are very creative and are artists, and I see the hard work that they put into it and like all of their talent. And there are so many artists online these days who like these AI programs or whatever are fed people's actual art, and then they recreate stuff in that style, and it's literally like
stealing.
Yeah.
Well, that's what the whole big strike was in California this past year, was about AI and taking somebody's image and being able to use it in, you know, in infinitum forever and they got paid for one day's work, you know. I understand their frustration in that. And AI just is popping up on social media more and more and more. And I don't interact with it either. I never like it. I never comment on it unless I comment and say, this is AI, get this off here.
Yeah, get rid
which
of
I
it.
don't. But I feel like it just feeds it more if you comment at all. Even if it's a negative comment, it still, you know, gives it what it wants. So. And
a replacement of an actual person, which I feel like Mr. Rogers would not endorse.
I agree. Absolutely.
For me, some parts of this book were just very like feel good, and like hearing he passed away 20 years ago. Hearing Mr. Rogers talk, you know, hearing his voice in some ways is even just like comforting to me, and I'm sure it's that for some other folks too.
I enjoyed the parts when he read. The other guy, Tom, I didn't really, I don't think I liked his voice very much. And so
I found it jarring to go from Mr. Rogers' voice talking to this other guy who, you know, even if he's quoting something Mr. Rogers said, the way that he spoke was just very different.
Yeah.
The back and forth kind of.
I didn't enjoy that.
It felt very weird to me. The one thing that I did notice is, a lot of times we kind of make fun of you or we say something about how fast you're listening to an audiobook, but I have found myself also listening to these audiobooks a lot quicker now, which I did
Yes.
not ever expect that I would. But I found that even when Mr. Rogers was talking at my 1.75 speed, it was still very calm and slow.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought if I was listening to this at the regular one time speed, how much more taking his time would it have been?
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was interesting.
I think that's cool that you've sped it up. I can't possibly listen to anything at 1 or even 1.5 anymore. My starting speed is 1.75 on everything.
Mm-hmm.
And then by the time I'm at the end of the book, I'm either at 2 or 2.5 usually, unless they have a really thick Southern accent or like a British or Irish accent.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I do have to slow those down to 2 or
The
1.75.
snail's pace of 2 times speed.
Yeah, I just can't listen to them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but yeah, and his voice was good. But I liked it, and so I looked up a little bit more about Mr. Rogers, too. I don't think I knew this. Did you know he was a Pennsylvania guy? Maybe you knew that.
He was originally from Pennsylvania. I think I did, yeah.
Well, he was from Latrobe, Pennsylvania, and he died in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So, you know, we were neighbors with Mr. Rogers, and he was everybody's neighbor. But
in
he
that
was
we lived in a neighboring state.
Ohio and Pennsylvania are neighbors. Yeah,
totally neighbors. Exactly. You know, I think Mr. Rogers would say we are neighbors.
Yeah, I think he probably said that about everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm glad I listened to it, and I definitely want to watch the movie now because
you can watch a Tom Hanks movie and do some math.
Yeah, that's what I'm best at.
So in the introduction, one of the encounters that Mr. Rogers has is with a young boy who has like a sword toy. And his mom says, this is Mr. Rogers. Don't you want to give him a hug? And then the mom like kind of, the way it's described is that she realizes he doesn't recognize who Mr. Rogers is. Mm-hmm. His celebrity status is kind of different because not everybody was raised watching Mr. Rogers. And obviously there's like a certain time period when he was on television. But this particular kid just didn't recognize him. But then on the other hand, there were grown adults who were like, you changed my life. I thought that was interesting.
Well, he was actually a minister.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I was going to say in real life, this whole thing is about his real life. I'm used to reading fiction. And I thought he was just such a compassionate man and very gracious to everyone that he encountered and kind. And we need more Mr. Rogers in 2024. I think we need, because there's just no one will ever fill his shoes, but it would be nice to have somebody that you know that you is safe to put your kids in front of watching. Like I watched that in Sesame Street and The Electric Company. Did you ever watch that?
No.
I don't know when. It was in the 70s. I don't know how long it lasted.
It would have been reruns for me.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And it was one of my favorite shows. But I just feel like there's not a lot of good TV anymore that is wholesome. And yeah.
Like the whole format of his show, he thought about a lot because he wanted to be certain ways. There was even one part where Tom mentioned they were filming an episode and part of it was that like this dog was lost and they needed to return it. And this woman used the word owner in reference to the dog. And Mr. Rogers was like, I don't like that. Let's say we need to help the dog find its way home instead. So he's very particular about even the words that are used. Like he knew how important words were with people. Because he took so much care in the show, in his interactions with people. Like, I think we can get so busy in our lives, just so wrapped up in our own heads that we don't take care with how we interact with people. Even people that like we see every day and people that we care about, we don't necessarily take care. So I would agree. We need more Mr. Rogers. At least more Mr. Rogers like mindsets or patience or grace.
Definitely.
For sure.
So one thing that Dawn and I decided to do, and we decided to do these 2 memoirs or nonfiction biographies, whatever, we decided to try and find the most opposite that we could. So we start with Mr. Rogers, and the most opposite one that we thought of was Britney Spears. And I think that we did a really good job of finding the polar opposites of
Oh yeah.
character
Oh
and
yeah.
stuff. So what did you think about The Woman in Me?
I found it really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So Britney Spears is only a few years older than me, and so like I was the age demographic that would have been her target audience.
Yeah.
I like in my life, except for when I was very young, can't remember a time that Britney Spears wasn't in the news, in media, in music.
Mm-hmm.
She's just always been there. Kind of how Mr. Rogers has always been there, but in
Yeah.
a different way.
Yes.
So you know about Britney Spears not because you tried, but because she's in the news.
Mm-hmm.
She's in the media. Her music's on the radio. But this book brought some background and some different stuff that you would have to go out of your way to learn about her. I learned stuff that I didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it was like the most well-written thing that I've read.
Mm-hmm.
Some other people that I know were reading it and they were like, I'm not really into this, even though, you know, I'm a fan of hers, or like, I heard that it wasn't really well written. And I'm like, okay. So it's not going to win like a Pulitzer or anything for
No.
sure. But I thought it was interesting.
Yeah. As I said before, I listened to it, and Michelle Williams is an actress who read it, and I thought she did a very good job of reading it.
I would say so. Mm-hmm.
I knew some things about Britney. I've never been like a huge fan of hers.
Me either.
But
Yeah.
I mean, if a couple of her real popular songs came on, I probably know all the lyrics. I mean, you
Right.
just do.
You can't help it.
In the early 2000s, especially, they were, she was everywhere.
Right.
Just like NSYNC and Backstreet Boys, she came out around the same time as all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And then I guess of course she was in the Mickey Mouse Club, which at that time I was a young adult and I didn't have kids yet. So I didn't follow the Mickey Mouse Club when she would have been on it.
I was not a Disney kid, so I didn't know
Okay.
Mickey
Yeah.
Mouse Club. But I did I knew that some other like pop stars had started out there.
Well, Justin Timberlake and Christina Aguilera. I found it interesting that Carrie Russell was in the Mickey Mouse Club. I didn't know about that. She was Felicity,
Okay.
who was Ryan Gosling.
Mhm.
So I didn't know that they were
Mhm.
until Brittany said it in her book. So I
Yeah,
thought that was
yeah.
interesting. It did make me feel a little more sympathetic towards her.
Mhm.
I didn't really know until she got out of her conservatorship.
Mhm.
I didn't even know that she was involved in that.
I knew that, but it's a generational thing. And
Sure.
I have a few friends who are like super fans, very
Oh,
big fans
okay.
of hers. I would see things on like Facebook or whatever when they would share. I knew things, but only like third step by proxy, like
Yeah.
not because I was out here reading articles.
And how many
specifically.
years was it?
I think it was 13
That's
years
what I was thinking
that she was
too.
in the conservatorship.
Yeah. As she was, as you're reading the book and she's saying, they're telling me I'm a dangerous person and I can't take care of myself and I can't take care of my family. But they didn't have a problem with me being on stage performing,
Mm-hmm.
6 nights a week.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm so dangerous and I'm so
So
mentally
unwell.
yeah, how can I do that? And
Mhm.
it really was amazing to me.
Mhm.
And you know that it all came down, the bottom line was the dollar, obviously.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
And her father, and this was an abusive situation.
That is 100% what I
yeah.
thought, is just that her family got very used to having money because
Yeah.
of her success. And for fear of her, of any of her actions, good or bad or whatever, changing that status could change the level of comfort that they were used to.
Mhm.
And so my thought is the conservatorship was their way of locking her in so that they would have what they wanted,
Yeah.
regardless of her well-being.
Right. And her kids,
And yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, if she's going to do, whatever behavior, like I think any distraught mother would do, well, that could jeopardize her making money for me.
Yeah. It didn't make me become a Britney Spears fan, and it didn't make me want to go buy all her CDs or anything.
Mhm.
But I am glad that I read it and listened to it. And it did make me want to, though. I think I'll probably listen to her sisters,
Mm-hmm.
Jamie Lynn Spears.
I think
'cause
her mom also wrote one too.
Oh, did she?
Yeah, she mentioned that her mom went on Oprah
Okay.
and talked about this.
But I think I'd like to listen to Jamie Lynn's because I have seen her in some things. And so I'd kind of like to hear what her perspective is too. I know that like when you listen to these types of things, we're getting Brittany's view. And then there'll be the viewpoint from her sister and maybe her mother too and her dad. So somewhere in there is the truth. I'm not saying that everything that I read about Britney Spears I believe is absolutely 100% true. It's true to her, and this is what she saw. This is what she remembers.
This is how she felt it and experienced it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I might read her sisters or listen to it at some point. I've got a list a mile long to get through first.
Sure.
So
I think listening to a book from her sister would be interesting because Jamie Lynn, I'm sure, doesn't have any memory of a time when they were, just a regular average median income family. Like for her, it was, I'm sure from earlier memories, it was pretty much always that like her sister was a pop star.
Yeah, because they're 10 years apart. And so it would have been around the time when Britney was starting to be involved in that. So yeah, I know it would be interesting. I'll probably listen to it. When I do memoirs or autobiographies or whatever, I almost always listen to those, especially if the author themselves are reading it.
Yes.
So like I just read or listened to John Stamos's this past week too, because I enjoy memoirs. I don't know I know you had a lot of thoughts on the Britney Spears one. So
we kind of talked about some of them, but my biggest takeaway from this is that it really felt like her family used her. At least that was like her experience of it, is that they used her and that she was essentially kept prisoner. Like they told her what she could eat, they told her when she was going to sleep. She talked about like being watched like all the time. They recorded how often and she went to the bathroom.
Yeah.
That really feels like a prisoner to me. And then if she, tried to speak up for herself, she would be punished for it. And that punishment was like, well, now you're going to rehab. Now you have to go to more AA meetings. Now you have to do this. I guess this coming out when it did was her first chance to like speak her own truth, because she had the media hounding her like constantly. And obviously the media is not telling the truth. She fully recognized that the media was just trying to rile her up to get her to do another crazy thing. So I think that she wasn't allowed to grow up or mature as a person or anything because of the situation that she was basically forced into.
Right.
So, like, if she doesn't make any more music and she just lives out the rest of her life and she's happy, then I'm like, good for you.
Because she's what, like 42? And so the conservatorship ended, was it 2022?
It was either 21 or 22.
Okay, so she's like 39 or 40-year-old woman. It astounds me what good liars her family had to have been, or they were able to pay off the people, the psychologists or whatever that kept her in that hole, basically. It just really was mind-blowing.
It was really interesting. Brittany herself like does the introduction or the prologue or whatever for this, and she mentions, she's like, a lot of this stuff is still like very raw.
Oh yeah.
And which is why she didn't read the book. But I think the person that they did have read it did well.
I thought so too.
For sure. I mean, if you can't have the person who the memoir is about read it, I think having a good audiobook reader is
it's important.
The next best thing. It's very important. Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
I think I would probably recommend both of these books. Would you recommend both of them?
I think that if you have an interest in the lives of either of those people, for sure. If you don't, I don't know that they're the best fit for you. I mean, it's not like I had a huge interest in Britney Spears' life, but I mean, everybody's talking about this book at the end of last year and beginning, obviously.
I put a hold on this book. I put on a hold through CleveNet. I also did the audiobook and the ebook on Libby, and I was like 600th plus in line for it. Like there are so many people who are interested in this. If this is like something you've been following, or if you've been a fan of hers, if you just want to see the whole situation from her point of view, like I would definitely say.
Yeah, I would. Now, I didn't like them as well as Trevor Noah's book.
Oh, no. Mm-mm.
But I
would
did.
agree.
I enjoyed both of
Mhm.
them. I'm glad I listened to them, and they're short reads. So
Yeah.
if you happen to get them, they're only like 5 hours long.
Mhm.
If you listen to them at the speed at which I listen to them, they're like 2.5 hours long. So it doesn't take up a lot of time.
Sure.
So yeah, the one thing I think that got me about Brittany was she enjoyed the F word a lot in her book. And so she kind of just was free with that. But then she would talk about God a lot. So to me, that was just kind of an oxymoron, or just kind of like, where do you fall in line here, sweetheart? Just make up your mind.
Mhm,
You can't
mhm.
talk out of both sides of your mouth. A lot of people do that. But
You will find no F words
yeah.
in Mr. Rogers' book.
No.
At all.
Nope.
For sure.
Nope.
I can't imagine him even ever having said a bad word.
Right.
Like anything past like fudge, you know?
Oh,
For
darn.
sure.
Yeah.
Right. I think, yeah, like I said, I would recommend both of these. Britney Spears' book if you're interested in her, or if you followed, her story.
Right.
A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. I almost feel like I would recommend that to anybody who works with kids, or anybody who,
It's got a lot of great advice.
yeah, it's got a lot of great advice. And like I said before, I think the greatest thing that you can get from it is like just an attitude of compassion.
Mm-hmm.
I think
sure.
maybe Brittany needs some more Mr. Rogers in her life.
I started Britney's. I had it like on Spotify, and I ran out of my minutes for the month. So then I did all of Mr. Rogers, and then I went back and finished Britney's. So it was a little bit split up.
Interesting.
I had to wait until I had my minutes back
Yeah.
so I could finish it.
I had to get an Audible free trial to be able to listen
Yeah.
to Britney's, because I knew that I wouldn't be able to get it before
No,
this episode.
you got 800 people in front of you. It's not coming anytime
Exactly,
soon.
right.
I'm sure. I don't know that the book will win awards, but I'm sure it'll be on the top 20 list of either
Like New York
2023 or
Times or something.
2024.
Mhm.
Oh, for sure,
Sure.
because people are clamoring to
Yeah.
read more about it, whether they're super fans or not.
Mhm.
They want to know.
I think Britney's book really opens your eyes to how some people are treated in like show business
Mm-hmm.
in that way. And like even how she had to learn how to stand up for herself in ways that were good for her, that were her, like true to her, instead of, because she could have been like a tyrant, like you hear some celebrities are, who are like,
Oh, they definitely tried to paint her as unstable, and she didn't help herself in that manner either.
yeah,
But I don't know what it would be like to live under a magnifying glass all the
Yeah.
time.
yeah.
It's kind of gross, really.
I think the way that the media approaches these two people
Yeah.
is extremely different. And I think the
Sure.
way that they approach their audience is very different too.
Yeah. I know towards the end of the book, she talked about one of her greatest. I think that what kind of clicked for her about getting out of the conservatorship was when she was teaching dance, and they were dancing, and she accidentally hit a little girl in the head just as they were, her arms. And she said she got down on her knees and she's like, "I'm so sorry." And the little girl's like, "It's okay, Miss Brittany." And she just realized, I care more about this little girl than my family who says they love me cares about me at all, and that kind of really was kind of the catalyst for her to say, enough is enough. I need my life back.
Yeah.
Anyhow, yeah, I wouldn't unrecommend them.
No, I think they're for
But I
different
think-
audiences.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm glad I read both of them.
me too.
Yeah, for
Or
sure.
they're for different audiences, but I think it was very clever of us to do the opposite too, because we did learn things from both of them, and they definitely are very different people.
Yeah.
But I'm glad I read both of them too.
Maybe the connection between both of them is just how much compassion we need to actually have for people, whether
Right.
they're celebrities or the little girl in the dance class.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. All right, so what do we got coming up in February? On Monday, February 5th, will be the Cookbook Club, and they're going to be making something out of the Cook Once Dinner Fix by Cassie Joy Garcia. This book contains 120 easy recipes that solve the problem of a quick dinner.
Sounds great.
You know, I don't work Monday nights anymore, but I sure hated it when I did because the smells from the Cookbook Club would waft upstairs and I would be so hungry.
Mm-hmm. I've heard that from a few people on
Yeah.
Tuesdays. They're like, "Oh man, Cookbook Club smelled good last
Yeah.
night." So the book club in February is meeting on the 8th is it the second Thursday they always meet?
Yeah.
Yep. So they are reading Women Talking by Miriam, I'm going to pronounce this Toes. Her last name is Toews. And the book is, in the author's words, an imagined response to real events. So this book, Women Talking, was actually made into a movie, which I've seen the movie, and I thought it was really interesting. It's about a real instance, some women in a community in Bolivia and some experiences and choices that they had to make that were pretty tough. So if you're interested in that book club on the 8th, Women Talking by Miriam Toes, and we have copies of that available here at the library.
And they meet at 10 a.m. and then again at 6:30 p.m. that
so
night.
There's 2 different times that you can come to for book club.
Yeah, and the spring story time registration will begin on Monday, February 12th. I think you can register online, right? Or you can give us a call and we can direct you to the children's department to get you signed up for that.
So middle and high schoolers are invited to a Palentine's party. So you can celebrate Valentine's Day with your friends. It's not necessarily about having, a romantic interest, but friends getting together on Valentine's Day. February 14th is a Wednesday this year. And we're going to make some friendship bracelets and probably have some snacks and hang out.
That'll be great. What time is that?
That's from 4 to 5 o'clock.
And then the winter mini break activities. So for children on Friday, February 16th, Saturday, February 17th, and Monday, February 19th, there's no school. So we're going to have a scavenger hunt and other activities for the kids those days.
February 27th is National Pokemon Day. And so we are having a Pokemon scavenger hunt here at the library. It's going to be an all-day thing. If you don't play Pokemon Go, or if you do, we have, I believe, 2 stops in the game, like 2 gyms or something.
Oh.
So you can come here, play Pokemon Go, and we'll have a scavenger hunt in the library on February 27th.
And our 3rd annual local author festival is Saturday, March 2nd. That's from 10 to 1. We'll have new authors and some authors that you're already familiar with will be here as well. And this year we'll also have a book giveaway. The more authors you visit at the festival, the more chances you will have to win that free book. And Dawn and I will be doing interviews again with the authors.
We will.
So
we'll have some new people here this year, so we'll hopefully get to talk to them some, and then we'll share our conversations with you guys, the listeners.
Yeah, so it looks like February, help you fight those winter blues, come into the library and got some good things going on. So again, I am Jenny.
And I'm Dawn.
Thanks for joining us.
We'll see you at the library soon.